This is I think, an important moment in U.S. development assistance dialogue right now. The global food price crisis of 2008 really shook people, I think, and elevated the importance of food security. People realized that if we cannot assure food security in parts of the world, Africa, other parts of the world, I mean, it really endangers world security.
The message is clear: invest in agriculture. Reverse the trend of neglecting agriculture. Farming should come first. Food security is key, and then all other commodities and needs can fall into place. We've had time to plan, and we are clear that what we need now is a concrete, implementable plan where there is joint accountability on both the G20 and the recipient countries, with a clear time frame on delivery and outputs.
We saw a very interesting facility in Bwane district, a huge, actually, layer chicken egg production facility with just South African investment. Very impressive. I think they're the largest producer in the Maputo area. The chickens were kept in cages at quite some distance above the ground, about 10-15 feet. The manure fell down quite some distance from the cages and was dried, sprayed with larvicide, and used, some used for banana production in neighboring fields. It was a very open air facility. I mean, very unlike the egg production facilities that we see in the US and developed countries.
There is a ready demand. They are going to be increasing their operations. They started with 12 of these automated houses. They are up to 18, and they are thinking of expanding in the next 3 years. The technology that's being used, it's all automated. The feed is brought in from Mozambique with a few supplements coming from South Africa, but bulk fed through an automated system to supply the chickens. Vaccines, drugs are incorporated into the feed, and the only manual process is the picking of the eggs, which is mainly done by women.
We saw the banana plantation. Again, this is a fairly new establishment for the Maputo area. It's a very dry area of Mozambique, so irrigation is very, very important. So without access to water, the banana plantation would not be possible. So a question I think that raised in my mind was, what would it take to assure that this kind of investment, perhaps at a smaller scale, including irrigation, could be available for a smaller Mozambican farmer or perhaps a cooperative group. This is a lot more friendly, small scale. I mean, you could see the possibility for smaller growers adapting some of the practices for their own. And I believe that more banana operations are springing up in that area.
The banana processing plant is another interesting large-scale commercial farmer enterprise investment, which is interesting in the sense that you have a whole plantation of bananas and really in the middle of nowhere. There are up to 400 laborers, and to me this is where the opportunity for using the same laborers who have mastered the technique to become outgrowers, because any one laborer will come with a household which has on average 6 to 8 occupants. Imagine the benefit if these were given small plots, medium-sized plots, to cultivate and grow their own bananas, what it would do to their livelihoods.
The last stop on our trip in Bwane district was a very interesting visit with a farmer and his wife. With a relatively small area of land, flat land. He had been growing maize up to corn, and he'd recently switched just this year to cultivating potatoes. This was really an example of a native Mozambican farmer who was innovating on his own, and he was pointing out with great pride his irrigation system. And it was a relatively simple gravity feed. But still very, very functional, and obviously, again, in this very area arid area of Mozambique critical for the success of crops to have this constant access to water.
What was interesting is to see a family enterprise where husband and wife are working side by side with a professional manager who helps them in the operation. The farmer seems to have a good link and support from the research services, but what was missing was support from input suppliers. He narrated to us that when he needs to buy his seed, when he needs to buy chemicals, he has to go into the various shops, but there's no visit from agro dealers who would be able to provide the extension support and also help in accessing the different chemicals and the seeds that they would require. These appear to be islands of success. They are already successes, so let's scale them up. We need to unpack why the others are not coping and try and grow more of those success stories in that locality. In terms of opportunities on the large-scale commercial farming, bring it down to the people, promote outgrower schemes that will allow small producers to feed into the enterprise, utilize the infrastructure that's already there so that you can meet the market demand. That way, the wealth will trickle down from the few elite to the middle and lower incomes, and everybody will come up with a skill that they can turn into better livelihood.
Been thinking very seriously about how we provide our assistance. How can we make it much more country responsive rather than made in Washington or made in a donor office. It's made us really reflect on how we provide our assistance and how we engage our partner countries, and not only governments, which I think have been the focus of most of our efforts up to now, but civil society actors in the private sector. The visit also served as a reminder to us about the patience we need to have for development, that real development doesn't lie in what you can get in 1 to 2 years, but in really thinking about what's the time horizon that we're thinking about. Where do we want this area of Mozambique to be in 10 years?
Africans are clear. It's not about food aid. It's about facilitation in terms of access to inputs, access to the right infrastructure, and markets. Let us invest not just in government, but in the private sector in Africa so that we create more entrepreneurs who are willing to take calculated risks with the priority of meeting not just immediate food security, but going into large-scale trade.